Hey, what's up? Start posting videos more regularly. People start asking more questions, so it's be careful what I wish for, right? I always talk about just ask questions. If you ask questions, then the person can tell you exactly what you need. If you only tell them what they think they need to know, you're really just playing crap. So the tweet that I put out a couple of days ago about lactic intervals, first things first, of course, all intervals of all kinds are utilizing all the different energy systems. Actually, when we go back to T equals R3, when I started to put together the things that I learned from Pavel and Val Nesedekin, I think we probably used lots of different words to accommodate the words that a lot of people use. But the one that I think we've fallen into, as I've talked about these concepts more, is concentric heart. So if the goal of the interval is very long period of time, along with maximal intensity, the heart rate is gonna significantly increase. Where the focus of that type of interval is the concentric ability of the left ventricle to contract and punch out blood, whereas the lesser intense intervals will be focused more on the eccentric heart, where the left ventricle will go and it can fill more, but it's not going to punch out as much. And those are two very, very different things, and two things that are very, very, very important. So instead of thinking on long distance and intensity, let's think about what the heart is doing during these different intensities. And with that in mind, I don't think it's appropriate to comment on the quality of the intervals only by what's happening when you work. So for instance, if you're miserably out of shape or you have very, very short rests, then what might begin as something that's eccentric will quickly become concentric. And that is probably not consistent with a well-intended training session, particularly for athletic development. If it's for general fitness, you're gonna bring the heat and you'll probably burn more calories or potentially fit for fat loss. But I'm not sure that's really a more sustainable approach to using these high-intensity intervals. So if we're talking about 30 to 80 seconds, which is really where we're landing, not that you can't do more, less is kind of no man's land, and then you're going to get into different energy systems. But if you're going for 30 seconds at maximal effort, there's a couple things that I think can be of value. Number one, resting long enough to allow not only for central recovery, meaning your heart rate gets back down to 60, 70%, but also peripheral recovery. And it might be good to test out yourself. Go bring the heat for a minute, as maximal effort, and you'll get a nice number, 96% maximum heart rate, and then you're gonna be gassed, and then the heart rate will come back down because you're in shape, you're really fit. And maybe your heart rate comes back down in 2 minutes, it comes back down in 1:30, whatever it might be, and then you go again. And you might find that you will bring that same 100% effort, but we're not going to get up to 96%. And that's because for these shorter concentric heart intervals, there's a lot of things that we need to use peripherally at the muscle level. And really where a lot of this stuff in T equals R3 tracked back to is that if we're not consistent with the rest periods and understanding what the heart is doing in the sport-specific heart factors, then we may find that changes in recovery and subsequent motor control might be part of the reason for inconsistent performance, which can include lack of durability. So when we go back to that tweet, I don't think it's a matter that people don't like resting very long periods of time, which is what is prescribed for this type of high-intensity interval training. You get the feedback all the time, 30 seconds on, 4 minutes off. Well, Charlie, my guys aren't going to rest for 4 minutes. I'm like, okay, well, I've found that when there's an effort of 30 seconds, maybe they're not going hard enough to the point where they need 4 minutes of rest. And I think that's probably more of the issue, where I don't know that for these long efforts, longer, meaning 30 to 80 seconds. And again, long can be defined in a lot of different ways. I'm just saying 30 to 80 seconds. And to really be able to bring 100% of the next thing that we'll talk about, which is called even effort. Okay, even effort is part of this ideal in this type of training, where you're always going to match your effort to your output. And if we find, at least in averaging out at particular intervals, so if it's 30 seconds, you're going to look at every 10 seconds and then average the 3. If you get out and blast out as hard and as fast as you can, it's very unlikely that you're going to keep that maximal output for the remainder of the 30 seconds. So you're going to get this curve, and we average it out. And it's also well found that is very hard to monitor improvement. Now, the heart rate doesn't really go up that much more. The speed doesn't go up that much more if you're on something like an Airdyne. But if you play around with a couple intervals and you find even effort, so for that period of time, what is your maximum speed that you can keep relatively like this? Now you have an opportunity to find what's called maximum even effort. And from there, just anecdotally, we see that can go from 22 to 24 miles per hour. That can go from 22 to 24 miles per hour, where it used to require 4 minutes of rest, and now it only requires 3:30, because now your next interval is a test. Can you keep it there? We've done this with back squats, where it'll be 21, 23, 26. That's probably not heavy enough. If you see 21, 20, 22, that's a little bit closer. I don't know what these intervals should be in terms of decrement, and there's not enough anecdotal data, but the key is that we're trying to match the intensity of the concentric interval with this significant periods of rest. I'm not sure we're resting long enough, and I'm also, in these longer intervals, probably not, I'm pretty sure we're not going hard enough. You might get out in round 1 and round 2, and you're really bringing the heat, and then all of a sudden, this drop-off in 3 and 4 is so significant. And if you averaged out power output or speed, it's never adds up. It never adds up to if we're seeing even effort. And a lot of the stuff I just do on my own, whether that's scientific or not, things that I'm learning about my type of physiology, which is probably close to a lot of the individuals that we train in explosive team sports. If there's an easy message, rest longer, go harder, keep the highs high, keep the lows low. Go back to one of the mantras of Charlie Francis, one of the greatest of all time. And in T equals R3, there was a big link to understanding concentric heart, but also the intervals that make that lower cost and how that tracks back to the changes that we see in motor control and performance. And I think it really answers a lot of what we're looking for being recovered or being under-recovered.